I got a progressive suspension, full progressive suspension for my 2019 Harley-Davidson Road Glide. So I got what you see in front of me is a full progressive suspension setup for my 2019 Harley-Davidson Road Glide Special. Now, you might remember that we just completed an Iron Butt challenge, and that whole weekend trip was about 2,300 miles. It became very apparent to me that my bike needs suspension to be a little more comfortable, to make those long day rides more bearable. I went ahead, did a little research, reached out to Progressive, and what we ended up doing is we got the front suspension monotube, the FSTs, and then we got the 444 for the rears. Now first, let's go ahead and touch on the front suspension for your forks. This is the monotube that goes on the right side. You got your main spring. Right here on this side is a little bit tighter wound spring, and then over here it's not so tight. So this is a progressive rate spring. This is the one that holds the load. You have here the long top out spring, a short top out spring, top out rod assembly. You got the fork cap, and then you have the preload adjuster that goes in the center of that. And then you have flat disc. Now those are all the parts that you need for the front end. Pretty basic. There's not that many parts to it. You know, so you just got to disassemble the front end, take out some of the stock internals, and then you put these in. Now, Progressive Suspension gives some very clear instructions, and they have a really nice diagram on how it should look exactly and how those parts need to be in order, which direction. So it's very clear, very easy. Take your time. If you're not very comfortable with it, then definitely have someone else do that for you that's qualified. Now you will need to go to progressivesuspension.com, put in your year, make, and model, and figure out which suspension is right for you, because a lot of it depends on your weight, if you ride solo or two up, or if you have a loaded bike. Okay, so very important, progressivesuspension.com. Now the rear suspension just consists of two shocks, okay? And these are the 444s, the 444s. And this variation is the heavy duty 13-inch, all right? So we went 13-inch for a little extra travel. We went heavy duty because I will be riding two up with a loaded bike, tour pack, gear, clothes, etc. So this is what we need to run with so that we have a very comfortable ride. Now, talking on both of these suspensions, front and back, they both have the FST, which is the frequency sensing technology. And what the FST does is it automatically adjusts depending on the road, the surface of the road. So whether you hit a small bumps or you hit a large bumps, it automatically will adjust for that, basically giving you a better ride, more comfortable, right? Better handling. So that's the idea behind the FST. Of course, once we put it into the bike, we're going to test that out by means of a short test run. And then I'm going to put it through the ultimate test. Is we're going on a road trip that's 5,000 miles. I wanted a bike that handled better. I want a bike that's more comfortable when I ride for myself as well as for my passenger. And this is what we're looking to gain out of this whole setup. But let's go to move to the garage, out to the road. Let's get this thing installed. All right, guys, so I'm out on this back road over here close to the house. And this is kind of a little bit rough road, so we're going to see how this feels. Pretty bumpy. Right now I have the GoPro facing to the rear shock. Get to see how that handles the bounce. But this is a pretty rough road. But on the bumpy side, and it smooths out right here. And we should hit some rough road again. Yeah. I'm on purpose hitting the rough areas. Hopefully it doesn't throw me to the ditch. But just to kind of give you an idea, okay? And we'll kind of want to see how that feels. I want to get a feel. I want to remember right off the bat how the stock suspension feels right now, okay? And I can tell you, I mean, yeah, I feel everything. This bike bounces around. You'll notice the front nosedive. It drops down pretty excessively. So that's what we're going to test out. So I'm going to go back down that same bumpy road. So now I want to see how much dive it has by looking at it up front. And then, let's see. That's that front nosedive. So you can feel how the bike pushes you. I can feel how it pushes me forward. Now, of course, I'm really paying attention to this. I got 25,000 miles on this motorcycle, and so I've just kind of gotten accustomed to how it feels. But now I'm trying to really draw out those subtle nuances of the suspension, and that's pretty rough. I can tell you. Oh, that's pretty rough. Okay, so now it's smooth. Good smooth road. Or smooth-ish. And then we're gonna hit rough road again. Go rough road. Big bounce. Big bounce. Big bounce. Oh. Yeah, I mean, I'm on purpose hitting this stuff because I want to see how it's gonna act. So, yeah, that's a lot rougher going this way than it was the other way. Alright, so let's get back to the house, start pulling this bike apart, and let's put some suspension in. Sound fair? Let's do it. We're going to go ahead and disassemble the forks. So in your stock forks, you're going to have this, your stock fork cap, obviously, the preload spacer, little metal tube, your fork spring, your top out spring, the stock top out spring. So those parts all got to come out, as well as the stock damper rod. So those come out. And then what we're going to put in is going to be the monotube, the long top out spring. It's going to slide into the slider, or the stock fork tube. And then at the bottom of that, we're going to put the stock bottoming cup, and then the bolt from the bottom, okay? And then that pretty much completes it. Alright, so let me just show you the difference between the stock spring and the progressive spring that you get in this kit. And I mean, you'll see right away the difference. This is the stock spring right here, and then this here is the progressive spring. Look at how much more wound up it is. The diameter on this is also a little bit thicker. Okay, so there you have it. That's the difference between those two. I've gone ahead and put in the monotube, but I haven't put out the long top out shock yet, because what I want to show you is when you get ready to push this down and thread it in, this is a very fine thread. Look at it. Okay, you want to make sure you get that thread in just right. So what I do is, and I'll see if you can hear this, spin it backwards. Do you hear that? Okay, I'm going to do it one more time. Hear that little click? That means that the thread on the monotube and the thread here have basically, as they're crossing, it's dropped in, ready to go this way. There, I'm going to show you. You see how you start spinning it? That's in the thread. Okay? Loose. Listen for the click. Then you go forward. Okay? With that said, what I like to do, I like to find that little point where the threads meet. So we're going to move on to the left leg now. I went ahead and got the other one mounted right over here. This is the spring that we're going to replace a stock spring with. And then there's the top out rod, assembly rod, and then there's the short top out spring. Okay, so these are the three parts that are going into the other fork. And then there's the fork cap, and then the preload adjuster. So let me go ahead and disassemble the other fork, and then we'll move on with this. We've got everything torqued down. Little blue Loctite on that bottom fork bolt. Torqued all this down as well. Got everything installed. Now we're ready to put it into the bike. And then we can start putting everything back together, and then we can work on the rear shocks. So let's go ahead and get that done. Alright, so we just finished doing the front installation. So we're going to go ahead and put on the rear suspension, and you can see there's a difference already. I gain a little bit more travel, a little more comfort, and then we'll just go from there. How do you think about that? Much more robust, just overall better. Big game changer right here. Alright, so we just got finished taking the bike out for a little test run. With the new suspension installed in the front. So of course I have the FST monotubes, and then on the rear I have the 444s or the 444s. Now those are the 13-inch HD variation of shocks that Progressive has in that line, and the reason being is we are going to be riding loaded. So I'm going to have myself, I'm going to have my wife there, saddlebags loaded. We're going to have a tour pack as well as a luggage bag that goes on top of the tour pack, and I'm also going to have a small cargo rack that goes to the back of my bike with a cooler. So it is very important that I actually have good suspension, not only to hold that weight, but also to absorb the road vibrations. Now, one of the things with the FST is that it's called the frequency sensing technology. So it actually allows the suspension to work according to the road vibrations, right? So it senses that. Particularly, you know, like on the highway, taking out those fine road vibrations, you know, on bridges, kind of like grooves in the road. It handles a lot better. As a matter of fact, on my little test run that I did this morning, typically this is the route that I go to and from work. And on the way there, there's some little grooves in the road that I noticed that with the stock suspension, you know, the bike would tend to deviate to the side of the road, or kind of, it would pull it into it. I notice now that it actually goes a lot straighter. It actually holds the line even with those grooves in the road. The nosedive on the bike has gone down, has been minimized quite a bit. As far as like when you take off, it has a good feel to it. It feels like the bike is gripping the ground and you're moving forward, okay? Now, we'll go ahead and say that with a particular suspension like this, you're never really going to get rid of, you know, the real hard bumps and things like that. It's a motorcycle. It has to have firm suspension to perform at its best, you know, to make you a more confident rider. You're not going to get it all going away. I've noticed that when I hit certain little bumps in the road, little bitty potholes, things like that, I roll out of it a lot smoother. Okay, so that's what I noticed compared to stock suspension. Now, of course, we went ahead and adjusted it. You do want to have that suspension right there with about laden, meaning loaded, about 12 inches from bolt to bolt. Okay, that's the important thing, is that when you sit down on it with all your gear, however you're going to be riding for the majority of the time, that you have at least 12 inches. All right, so it is a 13-inch. So if you're off the bike, it's going to be taller. When you sit on it, load it, needs to be 12 inches. So just be sure that you get your bike loaded to how you want it, and then you adjust it up here with these preload adjusters, all right? So this is how you're going to do it. So clockwise, it's going to tighten it up. It's going to bring it, you know, so if you have a heavier load, counterclockwise if you have a lighter load. The nice thing about it is you don't need any tools to adjust it. You simply just move it with your hand, and it's really not that hard. So you can do it on the fly, you know, in the middle of a road trip, whatever, you know, you kind of feel like it's a little too hard. Even if you needed to adjust it, let's say you get to wherever you're going and you unload the bike, and then it's just you and your riding partner sitting on the back, and to kind of come off and back off a little bit on it, super easy. Loosen your saddlebags and just back off a little bit. So I hope that you enjoyed the video. I do want to go ahead and give a shout out to Corey over at Progressive Suspension for sending this front monotubes and the rear triple force for me. But until next time, deuces.